Welcome, folks, to this week's edition of Tech Sales Advice. I am, of course, your host, Chris White, and this is the LinkedIn Live program for pre-sales professionals and pre-sales leaders. And these are live conversations, folks. This is not pre-recorded. As I like to say, these conversations are unscripted, unrehearsed, and unpredictable. And today's guest is no stranger to LinkedIn. He is no stranger to a microphone. This gentleman is the director of market insights with Seismic. His name is Steve Watt. He's based in Toronto. I was introduced to him a few months ago and knew instantly that he needed to be a guest on this show. And let me say, folks, I am paying probably more attention to what Steve has to say than anybody else because I can learn probably as much as anyone. Steve, my friend, thank you for joining. How are you? Welcome.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. I'm excited for this too. When we were introduced to each other, I believe by Ron Whitson. I think
Indeed. Yep. He's been a guest. Yep.
On your show, and Ron's a friend and a colleague of mine. And when he said you got to talk to Chris, he was right. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation that you and I had offline a while. Well, I guess it was online, but non-streamed a while back, and I really loved that conversation. So I was pretty happy.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to have you, and particularly because I know you're going to make this very easy for me because you're so eloquent. You're such a good speaker, and this is, I know we're going to be talking or talking through a topic that is near and dear to your heart. Buyer-centric social selling. By the way, folks, we don't necessarily see you out there. So if you do care to say hello, please do. If you have any questions for Steve or myself, please feel free to ask. And by the way, happy Juneteenth to everyone. I know many organizations have taken this day off, so maybe we're catching some people at home. Other organizations are still working. So, Steve, I introduced you as the Director of Market Insights. Do you mind just taking a moment and introducing yourself a little bit more broadly and tell the folks who might be listening, a little bit about your background and how you got here and what you do?
Happy to, Chris. And let me just jump on what you said for a second. We at Seismic, we take Juneteenth off, and in fact, we were doing that before it became a national holiday.
Good for you.
Seismic takes this sort of thing really seriously. We had a fantastic internal session on Friday. We brought in a history professor with a deep understanding and an entire career of researching and writing and filmmaking about slavery and, the stories of enslaved women in particular. And oh my God, what a eye-opening, heart-opening session that was. So I'm really proud that Seismic takes these things seriously. And, the fact that we're not working today means I got all the time to talk with you.
to talk about something that we care deeply about.
We do, yeah. So I, as you said, I'm Director of Market Insights, and what does that even mean? I'm not entirely sure that that's the right title for what I do. I'm a bit of a Swiss Army knife for social selling at Seismic, and what that means is I work. Well, I kind of say I'm like one third sales, 1/3 marketing, 1/3 customer success. I work with our own team, our own sellers, to help them, really rethink the opportunity on social and really embrace the opportunity to rise above the noise and become the sellers that buyers actually want to speak with. And we're not all the way there yet. I wish I could say that we were a best-in-class social selling organization, and we're not. But we're in a lot better place than we were a couple of years ago, and we've got some real emerging social selling stars on our team, and we understand what it takes to thrive. So I'm able to take that, and then I work with our Seismic customers, and in particular our Seismic Live Social customers, which is our social tool, across industries and around the world. That's some huge tech firms, but it also goes into professional services and financial services and elsewhere. And I help them launch social selling programs and upscale them and grow them and measure them and everything else like that. And then I also spend a lot of time writing about this stuff and talking about this stuff. So anything that involves the opportunity to be really awesome on social and to drive sales outcomes and marketing outcomes and talent acquisition outcomes and thought leadership outcomes, I'm always game for those conversations.
I love that. Take us through how you A, got into social selling, and B, became an expert, because just, based on your appearance, I think you and I are similar in age. And when you
29,
and I,
yeah,
when you
29.
and I, exactly 29, exactly. And when you and I first got into our professional careers, there was no such thing as social networks. So when did you make that shift? How did you make that shift? What were some of the things you learned early in your career that now you leverage here? I know that was a tidal wave of questions right there, but help us understand, how did you make this transition into being a social selling subject matter expert?
Yeah, it was not a sudden thing. It was a dawning of a number of realizations over a period of time. So back in 2006, I think it was, I'm sitting in business school doing my MBA. Guy next to me says, "You need to get on LinkedIn. That's where all the jobs are, the good jobs." And I'm like, "LinkedIn? What's that?"
LinkedIn.
Okay, so at that point, that's what it was. It was a place to go find jobs, right? So I
Yeah.
set up a profile. So 2006, I think I was like about. You used to be able to easily look up your LinkedIn number. There is a way now.
Hmm.
To me, if you don't know how to do it, I'll show you how to do it. But it's not so obvious. It's not in your URL.
Interesting.
But my number was around 10 million. So like
Okay.
LinkedIn's 900 million people now. I was around 10 million. So
Wow.
not super early. I mean, I talk to people. It's amazing. I sometimes talk to people who are like 50,000. Like, oh my God.
Wow.
So I can't
Wow.
claim that early. But 2006, that was pretty early. And it was nothing more than a place to park your resume and maybe look at some job posts, maybe hope that some recruiters found you. So that's all it was, and I did that.
Yeah.
That was 2006. Then in 2011, I went to work for LinkedIn, and I worked there for 3 years. And it was evolving. It was becoming more than just a job board. It was becoming a place where companies were building their employer brand. It was becoming a place for B2B advertising and marketing. And it was just at the early beginning of becoming, like, most of my time there. It was later in my time there that Sales Navigator was launched and stuff like that. So it's just starting to become a sales platform, but it was maturing. But I still didn't understand it. Nobody understood it the way I think about it.
And may I ask, what was your role when you worked for LinkedIn?
Yeah. So my first year, I managed marketing for Canada for
Okay.
both the talent solutions business, like recruiter licenses and company pages, and also the marketing solutions business, like sponsored updates and sponsored emails. Then in years 2 and 3, my focus expanded to all of North America, and it focused in on the talent solutions business. So I was wholly focused on helping firms understand new ways of building their employer brand to become magnets for talent, and also leveraging LinkedIn recruiter licenses to proactively recruit passive talent without having to outsource everything to expensive recruiters.
Yeah.
So 3 years deeply involved. And I also used to speak at university and college campuses all over the place, teaching students how to do all this stuff. But still, I was never talking about posting on LinkedIn. I was talking about having a great profile. I was talking about, reaching out to the right people at the right time in the right way. Nobody was like really posting on LinkedIn. And then, the time came where LinkedIn kind of rolled out the Pulse thing, but, you had to be like in one of their approved thought leaders or whatever. It was a very restrictive club. And so, like, it was a long time into this journey, and still LinkedIn was like a transactional, for me anyways, a transactional information gathering and one-to-one networking tool, which, hey, that's better than a job board, but still nothing like it is today. Then go forward a few more years later, about 2017, I went out on my own as an independent marketing consultant and a fractional marketing leader. So I was working with a variety of startups, helping them build account-based marketing programs, helping them kind of build and retool marketing teams. And this is when the light started to go on to me, because account-based marketing was really a new discipline, and most people had not at all figured it out. And I was a little ahead of the curve in figuring it out. So I just started posting on LinkedIn. I started writing like long form articles, short form posts. I was just like giving it away. I was just like, here's what it is. Here's how it's different. Here's how you build it. Here's how you do it. And you know what happened? People started coming to me. It was awesome. I started getting all kinds of people reaching out to me saying, Steve, you're talking about exactly the kind of things that we're trying to solve for in our community. Can we talk to you? Can we, so I would, meet them for a coffee if they were local, or I'd jump on a Zoom call with them if they were not local. And we'd talk for a while. And I'd just give it away. And then probably about 1 in 3 of those calls ended with them saying, how do I get more of you? That's how you get more of me. Thus concludes the free education. I'd be happy to come work for you in some kind of fractional basis. If I thought there was a fit and they saw there was a fit. And that's how I got all my clients. I never made a sales call. I never ran an ad. I sent an email.
That's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, it is the epitome of content marketing. Yeah. Right.
Content marketing from the individual rather than from the company. Right. The idea of a company pushing out content is nothing new. But this was kind of early days, like, 2016, 2017, 2018, when people were starting to realize that I can become a magnet. An individual can become a magnet. And I'm not claiming I was the first to figure it out, and I'm certainly not the best at it, but I was in that earlier wave. It was like a lived experience. I did this. And the more I did it, the better it got. The better I got at it, the better the impact became. And I became a magnet for the right conversations with the right people at the right time. And that is when I got really super stoked about what was possible here. And I could see how LinkedIn had completely changed. I could see how reputation building and relationship building and network building had completely changed. And I could see what was wrong with everything I used to do and what so many people around me were doing. Like, it all became clear. And then the opportunity came along to work for a company called Grapevine 6, which was building really powerful social tools for large regulated financial services organizations and some others as well. And then Seismic acquired Grapevine 6. And I've been with Seismic for the last 2.5 years, getting to do the same things, talk about the same things, but with a new T-shirt. So,
with a new T-shirt.
Yeah, you asked a long question, I gave you a long answer.
No, I mean, and look, I love. Here's what. First of all, I just love the story that you set out to be an ABM expert and launch an ABM business. You started writing and posting. People started coming to you, and then all of a sudden you became a social selling expert in the process of basically building your ABM practice. What inspired you to start writing and in essence giving your IP away for free, which is in essence what you were doing? Was that intentional? Was it strategic, or were you just so inspired and enthusiastic about the topic you just wanted to put stuff out there?
I think there was a little bit of both. There was some purpose to it. There was some strategy to it, but I would never claim that I had it all figured out from day one. Not at all.
Yeah.
But I also wasn't just writing for the sake of writing.
Right. It wasn't random. Right.
I did see that because there was so much interest in the topic, and yet very, very few people and very few organizations had it in any way solved yet. I did see an opportunity. Okay, I'm a little further on this learning journey than most people are. I mean, I built my first ABM program inside a tech startup in 2016 when most people were either hadn't even heard of it yet or were at least just starting to read about it. I'd done it, and I had some stories to tell and some scars to show about, what went well and what went poorly. And I did see that if I put this out here, I think good things are going to happen. And
yeah,
it was right. And then I guess the flywheel started to spin.
Yeah.
And more effort I put into putting more and deeper, more comprehensive things out, the more I got back in return. So then it built from there. But I did see, like I didn't fully stumble into it. It did make a lot of sense to me. And then I saw it at, I saw some other people out there doing a great job of sharing things about their areas of expertise. And I saw them becoming magnets, but I also saw people doing it wrong, at least the way I see, like being very self-centered. Like it wasn't like, hey, look at me. Like I wasn't sharing selfies and bragging about how awesome I am. I was saying like, here's the biggest thing I've learned, or here's the biggest problem companies run into, or here's the biggest difference between the new way versus the old way. Like it was audience centric. It wasn't about and I think that is the critical thing, that a lot of people who are uncomfortable with the idea of being a creator or getting out there, there's this like hangover from Instagram and TikTok and stuff, where the idea that it's an inherently vain motion. It's like, look at me, I'm so awesome. And that's the last thing in the world that I ever want to do. Like I want to be out there like, look at you, like I got something for you. I can share something. I can share some insights and some learnings and some lessons and some wins and some losses, and make it about you. And as a result, by giving, then I'm going to get it back in spades. That's at the heart of my philosophy. And that's why I try to like put people at ease when they're like, oh, no. I don't want to be out there. It's like, okay, let's analyze what you think we're talking about here. And often people think it's I don't know, be like a Instagram influencer, like, here's a picture of me eating ice cream. It's like the last thing in the world I'm talking about.
I mean, I just and look, Steve, this is really a lesson that applies to life as a whole, right? The more you give, the more you naturally receive, particularly if it's coming from the right place, right? We don't quote give sort of with the intent to receive, right? This is not a way to manipulate people. Like it has to be sincere, and I can tell just the few times that you and I've talked that it was a sincere desire to be helpful. It was a sincere desire to put useful information out there, and what
that it's going to come back. Like it's like,
yeah,
I don't believe that most things in life are black and white, right? That it's inherently selfish or 100% altruistic, right?
Well said.
I put it out there with an honest intent to help others, to educate and inspire and help others. Yes, it is an honest intent, but I'm not a fool. Like I'm not just spending my time for nothing.
100%.
I know that good things are going to come back. So yes. I think that you can be authentically helpful to others, but also be purposeful that, this is going to help me.
Right.
It's not my company. Yeah. Like I bring in business to Seismic.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's what we call win-win. Absolutely. Right. It's what we call win. We're not volunteer. I say this to all the programs. Like we're not volunteer workers here, folks. Right. I mean, there is a profit driver. There's a financial driver, but if we're doing it with the right intent, right, then both parties win. Right.
100%.
And just a moment ago, you used the term audience centric, and I absolutely love that, because I know we're calling this buyer centric social selling, but I think if we just think more in terms of audience centric creation and audience right now, we're just targeting and we're thinking about the benefit to the listener, the benefit to the reader, right? And they may very well become buyers if it's valuable enough, right? So and let's use me. I'll be a little bit self-centered for a moment. Let's use me as a guinea pig. Where would someone like me begin, or how would someone like me begin if I find myself thinking, I'm not doing enough on social, and I want to try to create more value in the market, bring a little bit, give myself a little bit more visibility, maybe build my brand recognition, similar to when you launch your ABM consulting business. Where and how do I begin?
All right. Well, we didn't script this, folks. We didn't plan this, so we're gonna fly without a wire here. How about we
100%.
live? Let's do a little exercise that I've done with a number of executives and sales leaders and others, and let's do it live and hope it goes well. And
Awesome.
It's basically, what do you believe, and who needs to hear it? Chris, what do you believe? Like within the world of pre-sale, I don't mean like what are your affiliations or something like that. I mean within the world of pre-sales, with sales leadership, where you focus. What do you believe?
Great question. One of the things that I believe is that most people who enter the pre-sales profession have the wrong idea about what it means to be a sales professional. That they think they don't think of they don't think of themselves as sales professionals. They think of themselves more as the technology professionals that they were, and they think selling to a certain degree is a bad thing. And they don't want to necessarily, they don't want to be pushy, and they think of, quote, used car salesperson, right? Used car salesman. And the opposite is, or it's, the truth is just the opposite. Number one. Number two, I think a lot of pre-sales professionals, not only do they not have the right mindset, but they're not equipped with the skills of having sales conversations. That a post-sales conversation is very different from a pre-sales conversation. And Steve, you may or may not have heard one of the things that I'm known for. One of the sayings I'm known for: he or she who buys a shovel doesn't want a shovel, they want a hole. But they don't just want a hole, they want a fence or a tree. But they don't just want a fence or a tree, they want privacy or shade or fruit or flowers. Yet we show up and want to talk about the shiny shovel. And we want to talk about the blade and hand, right? So we need, as sales engineers, we need to learn to focus less on the features and the functions in the product and more on the outcomes and value. So I'll pause there. Yeah. Those are a handful of things that I believe.
So you believe, if I'm going to feed this back to you, make sure I got it right. A lot of people have the wrong understanding of what sales is. They think it's kind of a sleazy used car kind of thing. No offense to car salespeople, but they think it's like a manipulative kind of thing, and you see sales entirely differently from that, and that a lot of people are not equipped with the right mindsets and skill sets and approaches to actually be successful in that way. Yep. Okay, so there's some core beliefs that are going to be relevant to an audience. So now let's go to segment. Who needs to hear that? Who's the first group that comes to mind when I say who needs to hear that, Chris?
Sales engineers themselves.
Okay. Who else?
I think sales leaders need to hear it.
Okay. Who else?
Good question. Maybe people who are considering maybe people who are not sales engineers but feel like maybe they've got some of the right skills but don't know how to make that transition. So people who aren't
SDRs and BDRs who think
maybe SDRs, yeah,
forward is to become an AE.
Yeah,
you're saying actually there's a whole other career path that you might not know much about.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sales enablement professionals.
Enablement. Okay. Near and dear to me. What about the C-suite? Do CEOs need to think differently? CROs need, like, is there?
I think CRO for sure. Yeah, CRO for sure.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, we're doing this quicker.
This is awesome.
But if we were really,
of course,
but we've established 2 core beliefs and 5 audiences: sales engineers, sales leaders, those considering, or maybe who should consider, a sales engineering career path, enablement, and then executive leadership, specifically CROs. So you got, now we know what you believe, we know who needs to hear it. Now we fashion a content strategy for you to bring those beliefs and those messages to those audiences in ways that will be interesting, relevant, valuable, and compelling to them. And you can start thinking about, how do you unpack your two core beliefs into different, I mean, just like you did with your book, right? You broke down a vision into 6 habits. So, perhaps you could unpack each of these core beliefs into different pieces and different ways. And you could also think, how would I express it a little differently if I'm talking to, a 22-year-old BDR who's just starting her career, versus how I would express it to a CRO who's been in the game for 30 years. And now you've got a framework that you can start to hang some good things on. And then you can start to think about being long form and short form. You can start thinking about being serious, but also being, entertaining. Maybe sometimes you're going to bring the message in a meme or a comic strip or a joke that is going to land with these people. And other times you're going to write a post, and other times you're going to record a video. And sometimes it's going to be strategic and high level, and other times it's going to be tactical and in the weeds. You've now got like a massive opportunity in front of you to craft a content strategy that hits home with you. It's authentic to you, because the core of it is your beliefs, right? You think about like you plant a tulip bulb, like that's the core beliefs, and then the sprouts start coming up, and then the leaves and the flowers start emerging on it. You've got the basis for a fantastic approach here. And it's not going to be about you, but it's going to be highly relevant to you, because it's rooted in your beliefs and your experience. And it's leading people to you. Right? I say that we often make a mistake when we try to lead with ourselves or with our company or with our product. Like, hey, let me tell you about Seismic. Let me tell you how great we are. Let me tell you about our tools. Let me tell you about our new feature set. Nobody's here for that, right? You don't want to lead with, you want to lead to. So if you go out and you do all that stuff we just talked about, you will be leading the right people to you, and they will be self-educated. You are nurturing them at scale. And then when they raise their hand and they're like, Chris, I want to talk to you, they're ready to go. Like they are already leaning in hard towards your worldview. And I'll tell you, when I was doing this with ABM, I had extremely short sales cycles, because people were like,
amazing.
I know I want what you got. Like, let's just skip all this other stuff and let's talk, how much do I have to pay you? That's how you do it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So the challenge is identifying your core beliefs and identifying who needs to hear those core beliefs. And therein is the framework for your content strategy. And then you've got to think, like you said, long form, short form, strategic, tactical, serious, entertaining, or playful or whimsical might be a term, right? And then from there you have almost a never ending flow of ideas and material that you can create.
And as you create, exactly right. And as you create this stuff, you're going to start reusing it too. I mean, it's a beautiful thing once you've built up a library of this stuff. Like, I've been posting about social selling and employee advocacy and stuff like this for several years now. I got a lot of stuff in inventory, right? So, some days it's totally fresh. I'm writing entirely fresh things. I'm recording entirely fresh videos. And, other days I'm reaching back into the pantry and I'm pulling something out from 6 months ago, and I'm rereading it and going like, yeah, you know what? I like that exactly the way it is. And I'm resharing it.
Awesome.
Or I know, I'm going to change a little bit. So I spend 5 minutes editing it, and away it goes. I mean, like, people sometimes they're afraid to reshare something that they shared in the past. Don't know. I mean, don't think for a second that everybody saw it. Like the vast majority of people didn't, and even those that did probably forgot it. I mean, I barely remember what I wrote 6 months ago, let alone would you remember what I wrote 6 months ago. So like, get over your fear of now I'm not saying just be like totally recycling stuff,
Yeah.
sounding like you're just running an ad campaign and nobody cares about that. But yeah, so you have this opportunity to build all kinds of stuff, and as you do that, you start building the back inventory, which just makes it easier and easier and easier, such that, you could be out there once or twice a day with great stuff, but maybe you only have to create, 3 or 4 new things a week.
I love it. Let's talk about frequency and channels or avenues. What advice do you give to people in terms of how frequently they should be posting, and how did you decide which avenues is it a blog? Is it, I don't know if it's articles on LinkedIn or other social networks.
Yeah. So Seth Godin, one of the great marketing minds, who's written like 20 books on marketing and gets paid the big bucks to speak at every marketing conference. He said something years and years ago that stuck with me. And that was like, pick 1 or 2 lanes and be good at them and be consistent at them. Don't try to spread the peanut butter too thin. Don't try to be everywhere. Because if you try to be everywhere, it's not going to happen.
You're nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be nowhere. And so for Seth, it's like blogging and book writing. Like Seth doesn't do social. He writes a blog every day and has forever, and he writes books. That works for him. For me, my lanes are LinkedIn and podcasts. And now podcasts are kind of evolving into YouTube channels and video casts and stuff like that. But basically, I show up every day on LinkedIn. I'm sharing content, but I'm not stopping there. I'm also engaging with lots of other people. You can't just treat it like a broadcast channel. You've got to, half of the game on LinkedIn, we focused thus far on what you share, but the other half, critical half, is like who you engage with and supporting others. And, so I focus on LinkedIn, and then I do lots of podcasting, LinkedIn Live. I'm very fortunate and happy to be invited on lots of other people's shows like yours, and I graciously agree almost all the time. Not always. I sometimes do, but not very often. And now Seismic, we're launching our own YouTube channel and podcast called Go to Market Magic, and I'm very
awesome.
Honored to be asked to be co-host of that. So those are my lanes. I used to do Twitter. I did Twitter for like 10 years because I'm a marketer. I have to do Twitter, right? And I never got anything back. Like I would put stuff out there on Twitter and it wasn't helping. Maybe I was doing it wrong. I don't know. But it never did anything for me. Meanwhile, I just saw ever growing value on LinkedIn. Like I was just getting so much in return on LinkedIn. I get nothing in return. So even before all the recent, craziness and scandals and unhappiness with Twitter, like I walked away from Twitter a couple of years ago, pre-Elon, because just like it wasn't working for me. So I would say to anyone watching this is think about. There's really 2 elements to it. It's got to work for you. It's got to be a media channel that you enjoy, and because if you're forcing yourself to do it and you hate it, like it's not going to work.
Forget it. Yeah.
But it's also got to be where your buyers are, where your audience is.
Well said.
It'd be great if you say like, "Oh, I love TikTok and Instagram," but I sell like cybersecurity. It's probably a mismatch, right?
Yeah.
So half of it is where do I want to be and where can I thrive, and half of it is where is my audience. And for many of us in tech sales and in B2B sales, the answer is pretty obvious: LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that for anyone watching this and trying to figure this stuff out, almost certainly being good on LinkedIn, that might be your whole game. You might say, "Oh, I got time for it. I'm going to be good on LinkedIn and we're done here." Or you might say LinkedIn and one other thing. But don't try to do 5 things. Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, do you have any recommendation on, like, if I blog, should or if I have an article that I want to read, should I write a blog and then post the blog on LinkedIn? Should I write a LinkedIn article? Like what are the different, do you follow me?
Yeah.
What are the,
Yeah. There's a lot of debate about, is it a mistake to forego an owned platform? Like to have your own website and your own blog and like an owned platform, and then use other things to drive traffic to your owned platform. That's one viable approach. And there's some logic to that. But then the other viable approach is what I don't have a website. I don't do that. I don't have a blog. I do it entirely on LinkedIn. And does that expose me to risk? Like, what if one day LinkedIn disappears, or what if one day LinkedIn bans me or something like that? Yeah, that's a risk, but I think it's a very, very, very small risk. I think
I
that
agree. Yeah.
I think LinkedIn is going to continue to be the central business conversation of our world for a lot of years. Probably as long as I'm going to choose to work. And I'm a good member of the community, and I'm not out there doing selfish things or hurtful things or anything. So they're
Of course.
me. So I'm comfortable with that tiny risk of not having an owned platform. Other people would say, no, you have to have an owned platform. But if you do have an owned platform, you still have to create content and create experiences off of that owned platform. If all you do is post links to your blog and links to your website, and everything is like you're going fishing and you're just trying to pull people off of LinkedIn into your, it's not going to work. Most people are on LinkedIn. They want to be on LinkedIn. They want to engage on LinkedIn. They want to read stuff and watch videos and stuff.
Right.
And sure, they'll go off and read a great article and come back. They'll go to your website and read your blog and come back. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if your whole approach is just trying to constantly pull them elsewhere, you're going to struggle. You gotta meet people where they are.
Oof.
And give them real value and real interesting, compelling content where they are in the way that is appropriate for that channel. And then there's nothing wrong with having links back to your owned properties if you want to do that.
Right.
And again, it's different. If you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, you're an agency owner or something, you're absolutely going to have a website and owned property. Yeah. If you're an individual salesperson, like, no, I'm not suggesting that salespeople go build websites for themselves. And
of course,
not at all. I suggest you just live out loud on LinkedIn.
Yeah, live out loud. I mean, you are so full of one-liners. I can't even keep track of them all. Meet people where they are. Live out loud. You use the word create. You use the term create experience. Make sure you're creating experiences. Can you elaborate on that? What exactly do you mean by don't just post or don't just write a blog, but create experiences?
Yeah, I think you have to be mindful. This is part of being audience-centric or buyer-centric or client-centric.
Other-centered.
Not just being selfish, not just being in your own head. It's like,
right.
Why are people here, right? Like, nobody's on LinkedIn for ads. Nobody's on LinkedIn to be hunted by salespeople who are going to barge into their world and, try to, like, hey, I see that we operate in similar areas. Like,
right.
Call House Tuesday at 2. Like, nobody's here for that. Like, why are people on LinkedIn? Well, they're there to learn something. They're there to keep tabs on what's going on in their industry and with their network and stuff. And they're there to promote their own interests in some way. Whether that is actually building a network and building a reputation, which is true for some of us, but for other people, they're not there for that. But, they're there to have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in their industry or their world or whatever. They're there for some reason that does not involve being hunted by salespeople or advertised at.
Marketed to, right.
When you start by understanding that, now you start saying, okay, so how could I then rise above the noise? Most people are just part of the background noise, right? They only use LinkedIn to say, hey, I got promoted, or I started a new job, or my company's running a webinar, we won an award. Like, you're just part of the noise. So I start thinking about how do I rise above the noise? And that's by creating interesting experiences for people. And that experience may be a series of videos. It may be a series of posts. It might be a mixed, like a balanced diet of all kinds of things, some videos, some posts, some links to external content, other things. I'm a big believer that like it's okay to kind of be like all business as long as two things are true. One is that you are audience centric and you're not just bragging or
me centric. Yep.
Yeah. And the other is that you speak in a human voice. Like nobody wants to read your press releases. Nobody wants to engage with people who sound like robots. And so I'm not out there talking about my family. I'm not talking about my, look what I ate for lunch. Like that's not the way I roll. I talk about business, but I talk about it in a human voice, in an authentic voice. I'm casual in my terminology. I'm provocative in the things I say. I'm not afraid to be a little bit funny, to be a little bit controversial, but I also don't go too far. I don't want to become a joke, and I don't want to, become a shock jock, So it's like I talk about business topics, but I do it in a human voice. I write the way I speak. And that. So if you're audience centric and you're human in your approach, then you can talk about pre-sales and talk about, better approaches to demos and better approaches to discovery and all kinds of things like that without sounding like a robot.
Well, and what I love what you just did there is we started out by talking about, first of all, you got to identify your core beliefs, right? Like you got to know, like, what do you believe? What do you stand for, right? Number one. Number two, identify who needs to hear it, right? And then number three, you need to be authentic, be human, be authentic, right? It needs to be human language. And I mean, I just love that. This framework is just so beneficial. It's really, really powerful. I was inspired to ask you two questions that are very closely related. Do you literally post every single day? And number one, and number two, roughly how many hours a day do you spend on LinkedIn?
Right. Almost every day, but not every day.
Okay.
I've never been a fan of sometimes you see people post, okay, I've committed to posting every day for 90 days or something. I mean, here comes the filler, right? Here comes the fluff, because most of us don't have something compelling to say every day. Now, in fairness, if you have been doing it for a while, as I said, and you can start to repost some things from the past, well, maybe then it's kind of easier to do it every day. But if someone's new and they're like, I'm going to post every day, it's like, I don't think that's the right approach for most of us. Because if you really had something important and valuable to say every day, you probably would have already been saying it. And the fact that you had to like take some like 90-day challenge to do it makes me think it's probably not going to work out all that well for you or for your intended audience. So I do post almost every day, but I do not tell people that you need to. Like I post, with rare exception, like I was on holiday. I didn't post.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm super busy, busy. I don't, but almost every business day I post. And usually on the weekend, at least one, either the Saturday or the Sunday, I'll post. Sometimes you get a good audience on the weekend.
Saturday mornings, for some reason, Saturday mornings have been really good for me.
Yeah, especially early.
Yeah,
you get people with like their family's still asleep, and they're like drinking their coffee, and
and they're catching up on the things that they didn't get to during the week. Yeah.
So I post almost every day. I experiment at times. Like this past week, I was posting twice a day. Once around 8 a.m. and once in the mid to late afternoon. You tend to get a little less engagement per post, but more engagement total. Some people swear by posting like 3 times a day. Like, that sounds too much to me, but hey, I'm not a gatekeeper. Like, I mean, we all find our own journey. Some people post once or twice a week, and it's fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is there is no right frequency. Just again, be mindful of the human beings that you're trying to engage. Every post that you do, you are training them. You're training them either to pay attention to you or to ignore you. And if you are putting out fluff and crap and platitudes and like nothing burgers, you're training them to ignore you. It's like, oh God, here comes Steve again with it's the last 3 of his posts I read were like, I got nothing in return. As soon as I see his name, his face, right? I've trained people to ignore me. On the other hand, I can train people to go. I like to say, you like my one-liners. Be a scroll stopper, right? We're all scrolling. We're all scrolling, and a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on that first line that you write. And yes, that is important, but that's not the most important thing. Because before I read the first line, I see your picture and I see your name. And if you have trained me to ignore you, then I don't even read your first sentence, no matter how brilliant it is. Because but on the other hand, if you've trained me to pay attention, I mean, there are some people. I'm sure this is true for you, and true for everyone listening to this. It's certainly true for me. There are certain people. As soon as I see their picture and their name, I stop the scroll because they have seldom, if ever, let me down.
Yeah.
And now it doesn't matter what their first sentence is or whatever. And it doesn't matter if it's a video or a written post. And it doesn't matter if it's long or if it's short. You've trained me to pay attention to you because you've made it worth my while. So you got to focus on being a scroll stopper. So that might mean, and looping back to answer your question, that might mean that you post once or twice a week. But they're really good stuff. Or it might mean you post once or twice a day. But don't fall into the trap of just posting for the sake of posting for the sake of hearing your own voice, or you will train people to ignore you.
Honestly, Steve, those words are quite possibly the best piece of advice I think I've ever heard. Where this whole social selling idea is concerned, this idea that whatever you do, you are training people in one direction or the other. You're either training people to ignore you or you're training people to listen to you. And I love this idea of being a scroll stopper.
It's fundamental, right? You might have
brilliant.
The most brilliant post in the world, but if people don't stop their scroll, nothing happens.
I mean, just so fantastic. Steve, this has been absolutely amazing. I told you we were going to be 50 minutes before you knew it. We are just about at 50 minutes. And I do want to be respectful of your time. This has been absolutely fantastic. I feel like I feel a little bit selfish because I feel like I've learned a lot, and you've been so gracious to do with me what I know you do with some of your clients. Anything else that maybe we haven't touched on that you thought we might touch on, or you think needs to be said in this idea of buyer-centric social selling?
I think just to close out is a little word about measurement and expectations. Oftentimes, salespeople in particular, but it's true for marketers, it's true for a lot of people, we've been trained and brought up to expect that everything is measurable and everything's kind of transactional. And you know what happens with buyer-centric social selling is if you're short-term focused and you're transactional in your mindset, you're going to kill the golden goose. Kill the goose before it lays any
no doubt.
I like to here's my metaphor for that is you're building a campfire, right? So you're out there camping, and you find some nice dry ground and you put around some rocks to protect it from the wind, and you get some nice birch bark and paper and cardboard, and then you got the small little twigs for the kindling, and like there's a process, right, to building a fire. And then you got that one friend who wants to just like take a great big log and just drop it on there because he's got no patience and no understanding of it, and you got to protect your fire from that guy and be like, don't kill my fire, man, because if you drop that giant log on it before it's ready, you're just going to kill everything. And that's what people do with social, and sometimes that's what sales leaders do is they want to drop that big log before you've built anything. And like, well, where's the meetings? Where's the revenue? Where's the pipeline? Why are you wasting time, Chris? You've been doing this for a couple months, and I don't see tangible evidence that it's driving our revenue numbers. So you should stop. That's dropping the big log. You gotta protect against that. If you are a leader, you are the one who creates the environment in which the fire can grow. And if you're an individual contributor, you've got to talk to your boss to try to stop them from dropping that log. So what I'm of course getting at here is that this is not overnight success. It's not a magic wand. It's a journey. You are building reputation, and reputation. Like forget LinkedIn for a minute. Think about the rest of your life. Do you build reputation overnight? No, of course you don't.
Of course not. Yeah.
You're building relationships. Do you build a large number of valuable relationships overnight? Of course you don't, right? You're building trust. We all know that it takes a long time to build trust and a very short time to lose it, right? So if you focus on reputation and relationships and trust, and think long term, then you think like building a flywheel that's going to feed the success for you personally and for your firm for years to come. Don't kill it because you expect all kinds of magic in the first months. You will fail. You will stop, or you will start just, it's another thing I like to say is don't every like is not a lead. I posted something and some guy in some big company hit the like button. Well, I absolutely need to cadence the hell out of him now, right? I'm going to send him 18 emails and blow up his phone and everything like that, because surely he's a lead. I'm like, no, he's just a guy who thought that was a good post. You're actually going to scare him away, and he will never, ever engage with you ever again if you start blowing up his email and his phone just because he hit the like button or because he left a nice little comment. You got to nurture that fire. Think longer term. Don't think transactionally. The bad measurement and short-term mindsets are the death of a lot of social selling approaches. So that's the other thing that's important.
Oh, brilliant close. And you're so right. I mean, this is the long game. Yeah. We're not sprinting here, right? It's a marathon. Yes. And once you build that trust, it changes everything, but it takes time to build that trust.
Yeah,
right?
You become, to go back to what we said before, you become the one that people actually want to talk to. 100 salespeople want to talk to that guy. You become the one that he wants to talk to. And it's not just about sales, right? Everybody wants to hire the very best people in the industry, right? So, and we all know that top candidates have lots of choices, right? Well, I want to become the leader that they actually want to work with, talk 100%. To, engage with, 100%. So whatever your game is, sales, marketing, executive leadership, talent acquisition, if you can rise above the noise, if you can become the one that the right people want to talk to, it just changes everything.
So well said, Steve. This has been brilliant, simply brilliant. You are so eloquent. You are so eloquent. You have so many great sayings. You have such great insights. Steve, I can appreciate a great deal why you are so popular in this space. And I'm sure the clients that have the opportunity to work with you through your role at Seismic absolutely love doing so, and I'm sure they get a great deal of benefit from it.
Well, thank you,
sir. Thank you so much for being here, folks. For those of you who caught us live, thank you so much for being here. If you caught the recording, thank you as well. Steve, I hope you'll come back and visit me again. Can we do this again sometime? All right.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on, and I'd love to come back.
All right. Well, we may have to make this an annual visit. Folks, thank you so much. If you enjoy these, be sure to follow hashtag Tech Sales Advice, or you can go to the website Tech Sales Advisors to learn more. And of course, Steve, I'm assuming you would be more than welcome to have people connect with you on LinkedIn. Is that a fair assumption?
Actually, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Yes. Don't pitch slap me, right? We're not here for pitch slaps. Reach out to me for an honest exchange of insight and content. I'd be very happy for that. And also, you can follow hashtags on LinkedIn. A lot of people don't know you can follow hashtags just like you can follow companies or follow individuals. Hashtag Buyer-Centric social selling. one big overly long word. Hashtag buyer-centric social selling. I've just been feeding all kinds of posts and videos and links to podcasts and everything in there. So it's a growing resource of more on this topic. So follow that too.
So glad you said that, and I'm going to add that to the hashtags that I'm following. So
Excellent.
perfect way to end. All right. Thanks all. Thank you, Steve. Cheers.